Congressman Jim Costa joining me now this morning. Congressman Costa, thanks so much for being here. We sure appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. It's always great to be on Sunday Morning Matters.
Of course.
Because it matters.
It does matter. Now, the discovery of that illegal lab in Reedley last year was shocking, of course, to the people in Reedley in particular, but really shocking valley-wide, because the more we learned about the company, we understand that it had previously been located in the Fresno area. You served on the House Select Committee, which conducted an investigation into the lab and the lab owner, a Chinese national. You've unveiled legislation to address some of the gaps in regulations of these types of labs, H.R. 8065.
Right.
We wanted to learn some more details about that legislation.
Well, thank you, Stephanie. It's an important effort. The city of Reedley is to be commended. You know, what we learned, sadly, as a result of this illegal lab is that there are significant gaps in terms of protecting public health and safety for the kind of pathogens and diseases that were contained in that lab, notwithstanding the laboratory mice that were there and the test kits. But for 2 months or longer, the city of Reedley was attempting to try to get local and state federal officials to help them. Finally, out of exasperation, the city manager called our office, and then within hours we were focusing on getting the federal and state attention to determine the potential exposure that the people of Reedley, and I mean, it's downtown, close to within blocks of a school, city hall, and from COVID-19 to hepatitis to HIV. I mean, the amount of fatal pathogens that were contained in that lab, I think would frighten anyone.
Right. What could have potentially happened was of course the concern. So what are some of the gaps?
Well, the gaps were, first of all, no clear federal or state agency in charge. So when the city was trying to reach out to get help and assistance, even the county, was really not up to speed, because we really hadn't had something like this. And so the select committee that I was on really did an investigation and really outlined between the Center for Disease Control, the Food and Drug Administration, and Homeland Security, where these gaps slide in terms of jurisdiction and authority to provide a license. I mean, all the owner, who's now in jail and going to trial here in the next several months or so, was to get a business license. To have all of this contained in this supposedly illegal lab, and all that they were required to do was to get a business license, is frightening.
No one questioned what was going to take place at that business because it wasn't required.
Right.
Those questions weren't required.
Right. And so so while the Center of Disease Control, as we contact, says, well, we have a little bit of authority here, but we don't, this isn't really our area. So what we're doing is bridging the gap that we learned the hard way. Fortunately, no serious persons were affected by it, to try to ensure that there is proper federal oversight and a process that takes place where we can train people in the future, working with the state, so that when such a lab attempts to be established, they have a protocol and they have a requirement that provides first public safety and protection of public health.
Is there a new department that's going to be formed, a new position, or someone designated to be in charge of this information?
We've decided you don't need to create a new department with the federal agencies and the Department of Health Services of the state of California, but what we really need to do is to make sure that there is a clear line delineation of authority that has determined to provide not only licensing, but oversight to ensure that, in fact, the public is protected.
You had mentioned in previous remarks that this is really just a first step in the process. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think obviously we have to get the legislation passed and signed into law so that we can close those gaps. But then after that, I think that it's important that we provide counties and cities the sort of expertise and training necessary.
Yeah.
So that when labs are located, and this place had been in Fresno, it'd come from Colorado, he had been in Canada.
And it was planning to relocate in Fresno again.
So that you wonder, my gosh.
Skipping around.
And you know, in terms of our national security, we've become much more focused on our adversary countries, China and Russia and other countries that don't wish us any goodwill. That are attempting to attack our systems of securities, whether they be financial or whether they be in our electrical grid. And this is an area, think about it, if you wanted to have some sort of a coordinated attack on America to unleash a series of these. I mean, we just came through a pandemic and saw how unprepared we were to deal with a pandemic.
Right. What do you think that was the motivation, or can you offer some insight, or, you know, what's your opinion? Why would the owners of that lab want to locate in the valley? Because is it because we're kind of under the radar, or
I'm not a person that believes in conspiracy theories per se. Having said that, I think there's, as we dig deeper investigating the source of funding to this Chinese citizen, where he was getting this money from, and what the whole purpose was for this illegal lab. I don't think we've gotten to the bottom of it yet, and that's why I think the investigations are still going on by the Department of Justice at the federal level, as well as the FBI.